Top Med Talk.
Monty Mythen here. As we prepare to move into the next phase of the COVID crisis, we're going to be widening our focus here on Top Med Talk. We will continue to deliver COVID-specific programs, but we all have a huge additional responsibility as we try to reboot normal services. So although this piece is not directly related to COVID-19, we believe it's information that is crucial to the bigger task of rebuilding the healthcare system as we learn to adapt and live with this new virus. Thank you to our sponsors and to you, our listeners, for helping us to share this important information.
Hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is Top Med Talk. We're here in Orlando, Florida for Anesthesiology 2019, the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. With over 14,000 delegates, this is the largest meeting and gathering of anesthesiologists and anesthesia providers in the world. Now, I am joined by my co-host, editor-in-chief, Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty. How are you?
I'm good, Desiree. Great to be here.
Yeah, it is great to be here. So this particular conversation, we are going to be talking to our guest, and who's been on Top Med Talk before, actually, Professor Mike Scott. Hi, how are you, Mike?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm very well.
Good.
Hi, Monty.
Good.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you.
Mike, you are from Virginia Commonwealth, right?
Yes, Virginia Commonwealth University. I've been
but that's
there
obviously
about
you're not
3 years
from
now.
there.
Yeah. No, I moved over to the US from the UK 3 years before, and I've been heavily involved with enhanced recovery after surgery and the UK rollout with Monty.
Well, good. Well, thanks for sitting down with us, Mike. You know, I know perioperative hemodynamic management is important to you, and that's one of the things that you have rolled out at Virginia Commonwealth. And so I really wanted to talk to you and dig in deep about how to make something like that work.
It follows on nicely from your talks today on AKI and hypotension, because finally the world has real visibility that hypotension and also flow is important for our patients. And I know that there'll be further data with Andy Shaw's group and probably the MPOG group to show that it's the length and duration and how low you go during anesthesia. But also there might be a signal in the post-operative period because we don't monitor blood pressure very well then either. So I think hemodynamic therapy is an important framework to get right within your hospital system, but it's a real challenge. And what I thought I'd do is share with you today how we've managed to accomplish that at Virginia Commonwealth University. Things aren't straightforward, it does take time, but there's hints and tricks that I learned both in the UK with Monty of how to get people on board and recognise the significance of what you're trying to do, but also the challenges of the US system where you're very siloed and you've got problems with both the way that the governance structure is and also the funding structure is.
So it's not just as easy as telling somebody you have to do something, right?
No. I always say now that quality improvement is a combination of basically it's an election campaign. You've got to win every vote. And I'm very pleased to see some of my budding residents here who are doing, as we talk, back at Virginia Commonwealth.
We won't give any clues away, but they're looking after their fluid management.
Yes, they are. Okay, yeah.
Hey!
So it's a combination of winning every vote. It's orthodontics, slow sustained pressure, and it's going where the energy is. I think one of the things that I've managed to do at VCU is harness energy. 3 of my residents standing in front of me are very keen and already adopting hemodynamic principles and ultrasounds in the PACU and making it all work.
I'll share an anecdote with you, Mike, which I think I shared with you before. I mean, back in the United Kingdom, the organisation that you worked at was legendary for having nationally fantastic results. And there's no doubt that in part that was because you attracted some brilliant surgeons to that organisation, but also your team approach to looking after the patients. So if we were looking for sites to send people to, we'd often ask to see if we could send them to your hospital, which was in that hinterland between a district general hospital and a university hospital.
That's right.
But it wasn't a big shiny ivory tower.
No, it only had about 700 beds. I think the thing that enabled us was we were the major cancer centre for the region, so it gave us the volume to do the same thing and develop the pathways.
So my anecdote is while we were setting up a cystectomy enhanced recovery programme at my organisation, University College Hospitals, back in London. And we encouraged the person leading the programme to go and visit Guildford. And they came back and they said there's 2 really big ticket items. There's the pain management and the hemodynamic management. so we're going to do the pain management. And I said, hang on, I thought they said there were 2 big ticket items. And they said, yeah, but the second one's hard to get everyone to do.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So they did half of it.
So they did half of it.
gosh.
Yeah.
They've got around to it eventually because they didn't get the return on the investment.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. Most of ERAS is protocolization
Yeah.
and compliance with those elements. I think getting opioids out of surgery, but ensuring patients have good functional recovery is key. And we've done that at VCU. We've almost halved opiates in the perioperative arena in the last 12 months alone with a structured approach. And so, the biggest challenge, I agree, is actually the hemodynamic framework and getting people to recognize the importance of fill the tank, optimize flow, and then maintain pressure. And that's our little motto that we've got going in VCU at the moment is fill, flow, pressure. And that's the buzzwords at the moment to get this implemented. And we're now in week 4. But it's taken a long time to get there. We use all the different flow monitors. They've all got advantages, disadvantages. Some are more invasive than others. If you've got an arterial line in, then we just put it on a flow track, obviously, because that's easy. But sometimes we're not got an arterial line, we might use bioimpedance. Or the other time we might use something else like the esophageal Doppler. So we like to think that we use all of the technologies, but we do use them slightly different from some of the traditional GDFT studies, and it's something we developed in Guildford. And our feeling is that even with carbohydrate loading, you need a certain volume to go on to mitigate against the physiological changes in positive pressure ventilation.
Absolutely. Well, but I get very distressed when I talk to people about that. That's established in the literature so long ago, it's almost pre-PubMed.
Yeah.
So once you put positive pressure in the chest, you are relatively centrally hypovolemic, and in the first instance, physiologically, you can only correct that by giving more volume.
Exactly right.
And that seems to be lost in the passage of time. You get these people who say to you, well, we gave them an anaesthetic so they're vasodilated, so if I squeeze, everything will be okay. Wrong. It's got you need some more volume.
Absolutely. And we found in all our RCTs, when we're using Doppler to measure this, we did this before induction, we found a range between 16 to 14 mils per kilo on ideal body weight. And I think what Relief did...
consistent.
Yeah, and what Relief did, I think, was recognise the fact the Relief study showed that you're safe to be slightly over zero balance. And they all gave about 10 mils per kilo at induction, which I think is a good figure for people to start off with.
If everyone's not familiar with Relief, that's the 3,000 patient, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, zero balance versus moderately liberal. And that litre of fluid that we were brought up to give around the time of induction of anaesthesia was at 10 mils per kilo they gave it, so let's call it about 700 mils a litre or whatever it is. The group that did well had that as a kicker, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. I think they all had some of that, but the point is that we know that you can't mitigate the physiological effects of IPPV,
positive pressure ventilation.
Yeah, without giving some fluid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the thing what we're trying to do is we use either passive leg raising or we use the tipping the table head down. Use the monitor then to find out what the maximum stroke volume is. Passively, not in response to fluid bolus. And then that's what we set as the target stroke volume for the patient for the surgery. So effectively, there is a small amount of time where you've got to optimise the patient before you either start surgery, do the pneumoperitoneum, or put the patient head down.
Let me pause again for a reminder about physiology there. If you read the classical physiological texts, a healthy human being lying flat on their back has no preload response. They're not preload responsive if you don't shift the Starling curve with inotropes, etc. So you're trying to put them back to physiologically being centrally euvolemic by doing a tilt test or a leg raise.
Correct.
So when you do that and they get a stroke volume rise, you give the amount of fluid required to achieve that stroke volume. Yeah,
and basically we use the 250 mil boluses until that no longer...
And how much typically do you have to give? I know there's a range, but...
Well, the range is 500 to a litre.
Yes, remarkably consistent.
And we always work on ideal body weight for fluids in our hospital.
So if you're not going to be that clever, give the litre at least.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad way, or certainly 750, 10 per kilo on ideal body weight, yeah.
When you were designing this program and utilizing the technology and all these different things, how did that go? Walk us through kind of the implementation, because you were explaining this to me, and it's so important. It's not just telling people you got to use this and do it like this.
Implementation is different, is very challenging, and there's all sorts of tips and tricks. So when I first arrived at VCU, we had all the monitors, literally, I got those coming in before I even arrived. And what then happens is you get certain people, so this is where the energy is important. We've got certain people within our department who've really grasped this, that then got many hundreds of case experience, and those then are your champions to lead this through. Then you need a mission to why we need to do this. And so just like we had a high surgical site infection rate at VCU and did the whole thing on that, and now we're one of the best performing hospitals in the country, in the top 10% for low SSIs. I mean, we haven't even had any the last 2 months.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty awesome. So I used AKI as the major signal here, because that's what you can measure. Even though we know from the recent studies, Federer and Press, and certainly from our experience in Guildford, that fixing flow and pressure through the perioperative period, there's a very strong signal for basically sepsis and surgical site infection, and for other things like delirium and myocardial injury. So this is a big fix, and it deals with all-cause complications, but it is the most difficult to implement. So AKI is what we're monitoring. We're also so we've done that by having to set up data analysis in Cerner, which is our electronic patient record. Other electronic patient records are available.
Thank you.
And we've used Tableau. So we've actually had to create another data warehouse to extract the data and then use Tableau to analyse this. And this has been so I'm very lucky. I'm now a medical director of the clinical effectiveness team. And I have a whole team of about 9 people, headed up by Paula Spencer, who's a fantastic director. We have our own data analytics person, and then we have all these project managers. And also in the anaesthetic department as well, I've got someone called Pranav Shah, who is an absolute whiz with data and analytics. So he has grasped this, and this is where going the energy again.
Can I interrupt for 1 second there, Mike? I can imagine everyone listening there and saying, hang on a second, we're never going to get those resources. And that's because they didn't make the value proposition. Whereas you said, I will get you back more money than you're spending.
Exactly right. So, it was a struggle when I first arrived at VCU, and we've grown the clinical effectiveness team. We've used SSI and opiates to show the value.
Have you delivered?
Yes.
Have you delivered value?
Absolutely.
Have you overperformed?
I couldn't possibly comment, Monty. The people watching will be the judge of that.
Are they, putting it crudely, are they up on the deal?
Yes, very much so. I mean, just by cutting down SSI, our top-line revenue has gone up because we're no longer penalised. Our length of stay has gone down. We've increased major surgical throughput by 7% with 6% less surgical bed days.
What was your AKI rate for the major surgeries?
I can't comment because that's confidential, and we were actually very poor.
I'll phrase it another way. In relief, in the control group, the AKI rate was in the range of about 8 to 10%.
Yeah, we're worse than that.
And in the interventional group, in Fedora, it was about 2%.
Yeah, and 2% fits where we were back in Guildford.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The one thing I would say is thanks to also my Quality Improvement Surgical Clinical Fellow, Brenton French, who's also helped with all of this work, and all of the attendings in VCU who do the POCUS ultrasound course and everything, and their residents. We've run it for 3 weeks, and we've only had 2 stage 1 AKIs.
Stage 1, so that's...
Stage 1, so which really...
It's a whiff.
It's a whiff, and also when you think of surgical injury, a lot of stage 1s you can't actually avoid.
Yeah. So there does seem to be about that 1.5 to 2% in the very best programs in the world that you can't avoid because it's probably an embolus or something that you can't fix with volume, flow and pressure.
And we do have a high morbidity index at VCU. We've got 42% indigent population. They've all got diabetes, CKD, hypertension, obesity, so high renal risk.
So I'll be quiet now and let Desiree extract from you what you did. What was the secret sauce?
That's what I was going to ask. So, I think that's phenomenal, and I can't wait to hear more about what that is going to look like because we know that it's going to be successful because it can't not be with what you guys are doing. But we know it works, but how do you get it to work? Like, how do you get everybody on board? How do you get people, utilizing new technology? How do you get people? Talk to us about how you do all of this.
Well, I think what Monty said is if you know you're going to give about 10 per kilo anyway, you can be getting the IV in and almost hitting that goal in order then doing your passive leg raise. So that if that's a time-dependent variable, that's important.
So maximise stroke volume at baseline, that's the only way you know you can be euvolemic.
And I think it's all about starting in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
If you start in the middle of the road, you know that you're much more sensitive to turning left or turning right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that.
And so that's why I think that's important. Then we re-optimise at the end. We let people basically do their own thing during the surgery, although we do have a guide. So if you're doing laparoscopic surgery, and we know that once you're about 30 mils per kilo up on fluid, so that's about 2 litres in, we know with relief a litre is safe. You've got to think about it if you're going more than that in laparoscopic surgery, and in open surgery, it's probably if it's the 4th bag of saline. So again, that gives you a sort of a zone for therapy. We're making sure the patient starts in the right direction. They're euvolemic because they're getting the carb load. And then we're making sure everything at the end is okay. So there's only the bit in the middle where they then can start going wrong.
And the big presser question, because everyone wants to...
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too.
InPress was low-dose peripheral norepinephrine. Some of the other goal-directed trials have been more, rounded, holistic.
I think we use phenylephrine in the OR. Unless you've got a central line, we're not meant to be giving norepi, but we are looking at ways to whether we can give dilute norepi through a peripheral line. There's this huge resistance from pharmacy on this, which is a real shame. But
so what
to me, norepi does...
You give phenylephrine infusion?
Phenylephrine infusion. We're trying to get away from boluses, because every time you bolus, you're creating this roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I think once you're given a stick of phenylephrine, there's no doubt you should be putting an infusion up. It also makes, if you think of what our target maps are, a normal blood pressure 120/80, you've got a map of 90/95.
Yeah.
And yet we're tolerating maps of 65, which doesn't make sense from a physiological point of view, 2/3 are normal. So I even think 65 might be too low for perioperative care, because you're still actually flying the plane across the treetops, because we know it's below 65 from the Cleveland Clinic work, that's where you're starting to get harm. The real question is how we provide the right vasopressor, because phenylephrine does different things to your arterial and venous circulation depending on your volume and your sympathetic state. So we haven't got the answer to vasopressors yet, but I do think norepinephrine in low doses, by definition up to, say, 7-10 mics, so a 0.01 mics per kilo.
Remind ourselves the InPress trial, the Foutier trial.
The one in JAMA,
Yeah, which was a multi-centre French trial. Although relatively small, 300 or so patients, they went for within a certain percentage of baseline systolic. They optimised volume first, maximised stroke volume, then gave a low-dose peripheral norepinephrine infusion. It's all written up and in the appendices of the paper. We talked about it frequently on Top Med Talk. That's what a lot of people are trying to get to, but they usually butt up against their in-house pharmacy people who tell you that you can't give peripheral norepi, and you say, for why? And they say, we don't know, we can't remember, but we've just told each other that for so long.
Yeah, and yet we're allowed to give 1 in 10,000 epinephrine through an IV and people's arms don't fall off. Yeah. So it is the enigma out there, isn't it, that why we can't give peripheral dilute norepi.
Whereas we've interviewed a number of people in the USA who can give it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's institutionally variable, so it cannot be a truth, because some places...
It's something I think the whole anaesthesia community need to work on, as we now recognise that we need to fix blood pressure. And we know that norepi then actually, if you use flow velocity loops and volume using central aortic blood flow during surgeries I've done in the past, we know if you start phenylephrine, you will raise the blood pressure, but you often narrow the loop. Whereas norepi, you open the loop and you increase the blood pressure.
It's got some beta.
Because of the beta effect.
Yeah.
So it probably is got to be. I mean, we even need dilute norepi sticks, because in Germany, that's what they give, isn't it? It's a standard of practice as their first-line vasopressor.
So one of the questions I have is that, I think that it's really easy for us to throw on, say our name in the OR, every day, cranking them out. It's really easy to grab, the Neo and just stick it on before we really think about the flow and the pressure, or the flow and all the other, and volume. And so, what have you done with your team to kind of bring that into and say we're not just treating blood pressure. We are really truly looking at all the hemodynamic parameters for these patients because people have a hard time.
Yeah, it's about education. So we started with a discussion document. I did the same thing for bringing in oral carbohydrates. So you get the steering group of everyone that can affect the change. Everyone from the chair of surgery, the head of quality and safety. You want your own team anaesthesia in there and the surgical NS-equipped people in. And then what we did was we formed a discussion document of why MAP was important, why flow was important, why nadir hematocrit is important, because that's another part of the equation. That's helped us provide the preoperative anemia clinics and the iron infusions, etc. Because if you don't have to challenge someone's nadir hematocrit, then they're not going to get not so likely to get complications. So the discussion document actually, it was a 32-page document. We ran it through team anaesthesia first, ratified that, sent it out to surgery and everyone else. And anyone who I saw as an obstacle, I put on the steering committee. Because the important thing is if you've got someone who you think might not see the value, you've got to show them the value. Yeah. So that discussion document then got ratified. And then the next thing is you need governance within your institution. And one of the things we've redone at VCU is we've remapped the governance of perioperative care. And we have a perioperative executive steering group, executive committee with all the CEOs and chairs in surgery and chairs of anaesthesia. Then we have a quality and safety regulatory committee, which I co-chair, and an ERAS steering committee, which I'm part of.
Are you taking team responsibility? One of the big debates we've been having back in the UK is the surgeon gets named for all the results.
Yeah, this is really good.
And sometimes they've done great surgery and it's your wound infection.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think part of it is to show surgeons that you're offering the value and the answer rather than directly challenging them. And this is part of the thing. So part of the presentation that my fellow did at the surgical ground rounds was to get surgical buy-in, that we were here to support them and get the quality up and get their results better.
Yeah.
So then we've actually got a quality document which says this is a good thing and this is what VCU should be achieving. Then we created the framework, so Pranoff, Shah, Brenton French, and I created the inclusion criteria, the maximum benefit for this area, so it's the high-risk patients and high-risk surgery, or patients developing who've got high blood loss, long surgery and SIRS. So not everyone gets it, but there's a large proportion that do. So we created that framework, then we created the algorithms of how to use the different bits of equipment and to start in the middle of the road. And we've got our own optimization, stroke volume optimization algorithm, which makes people think that, like, if you're giving more than 3 boluses of 250, so 10 mils per kilo, and nothing's happening in the surgery, you're either losing blood or you're vasodilating. So you've got to look at anaphylaxis or sepsis. So it's good because it gives you a guide, but you maintain the independence of the practitioner. We're not telling them what to do all the time, but it's just a useful guide. I think the other thing that's important is, as I say, with all the residents from VCU here and my other attending staff, Mike Fowler, good to see you all here, is everyone's now, over 3 years, all the residents have come through training, so they all get this. Yeah. And so do all the CRNAs. Awesome. So we've now got a large cohort of people that totally understand why we're doing this and how we're doing it. And I think that's very important as well.
I know we're a broken record about it, but the recurring theme, and remarkably how commonly you get it in the USA, they go on about the fact about how much money they spend in this wonderful country on healthcare. But to have I can't afford to do it as an excuse, I find just completely incredible. I choose my word carefully. I would say you can't afford not to do it.
Well, that's exactly right. If you're talking quality.
If the NHS can afford to do it. Sorry.
Well, the unusual thing is American healthcare, private healthcare, is the only industry in the world which is rewarded for failure. So you get more money if you get complications. I think the thing that's helped drive this at Virginia Commonwealth University is we've got this 42% indigent Medicare, Medicaid. Yeah. And we lose money if we get complications on those.
That's the motivator.
So we're a lot more like the NHS. We're episode payment bundling. So it's important we knock our complications down, because if we don't, that we will be going into the red.
And AK rates, as you say, are tolerating up to 2%, but not tolerating 10, 20,
Yeah,
30, 40%.
I have to be careful with what I can't possibly tell you what our figures are. But the good news is the first 3 weeks of rolling this out, we only had 2 stage 1 AKIs.
Well done.
Yeah, that's
so I think it shows that if you get everything in place, then hopefully, if this signal remains, then we will be fixing not just AKI, but sepsis, reintubation rates, pulmonary complications, etc.
The economy.
I wish.
Well, you're contributing to it. Mike, I just want to say congratulations. You're changing the world, man. This is awesome.
No, not
Yeah, you are.
Well, I must say,
it's awesome.
It's not just me. It's all about the team, some of
Right.
which are here today.
Yeah, and Mike wanted to give a shout out to his team.
I want to give a shout out to the team at the very end. I've got also 2 more questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, gosh,
Yeah.
we're going back in.
No.
Oh,
One is, would you consider coming back and helping us with Brexit?
I thought you were...
Well, something needs to change, yeah. I still can't sell my house.
And the second one is, I was telling a little story earlier on that your knowledge of Burgundy wines
Oh, yes.
is
Now we're talking.
is of such a level that you actually have, within the region of Burgundy, you have your own nickname.
Yes,
Is that true?
I'm called Le Loup Blanc. And the Loup Blanc is what the French calls the person that knows everyone, because I know all the vignerons in Burgundy. So
what does it translate to?
Yeah.
the White Wolf.
The White
The
Wolf.
White
There
Wolf.
we go. So we had.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So the White Wolf's going to come and fix Brexit. Sorry, Desiree.
We're
Your
going to
team.
we're going to keep him in the U.S. to fix healthcare. So, give a shout out to your team, because it's not just you.
Well, it is, because, as I say, it's all about building the infrastructure and having our perioperative team. We've got Steve Cates, who's in orthopedics for ERAS as well. We've got Will Zulza, who's head of the Perioperative Executive Committee. My chair, John Butterworth, who's been amazingly supportive. Robin Hemphill, head of quality and safety. And then all my own team, everyone in team anaesthesia. They're too much to name, but as I say, the fellows, Brenton French, Ben Rothstein, who did the original hemodynamic work, and Pranav Shah, who's helped with the integrate all of the data, and then my own clinical effectiveness team. Thank you.
Well, that's fantastic. Keep up the good work.
Thank
I
you.
know it's always a road to hoe. You got to keep on going. It never
Well,
stops.
it'll be interesting to see what all our complication rates are in the 12 months.
Every time you get interviewed, you give shout outs to Top Med Talk. So
Yeah, well,
thank you
this
so
is
much.
the best CME out there. You can drive your car, you get the international world experts. I exclude myself from that. But it's fantastic, and you can learn on the way to work in your car without having to pick up a journal. And I must say, I think when you hear things, you actually take more in than actually just reading stuff. Yeah, it's straight to your brain. Absolutely.
Well, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks for everyone here at the ASA for listening. Thanks for those who are watching at home or wherever you are in the world on Twitter. Yeah, topmedtalk.com, our Top Med Talk app. We have that. On your podcatcher, you can catch it anywhere there too. So all
Free,
different ways to
all
listen.
free.
Yep, free, open access medical education.
Real free.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah, and thank you again to all of our sponsors that help make that happen, because this would not happen without you. So thank you very much.
Top Med Talk.
Nick Majerison here. Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. EBPOM has been advocating perioperative medicine for many years now, using the traditional conference circuit, where people have attended meetings from all over the world and heard some of the latest information. However, in the face of the COVID crisis, EBPOM took a bold decision. We've transposed the entire conferencing experience into an online experience. Carbon-friendly conferencing. The latest information, the latest talks, the hottest experts, the most incisive analysis, and even the socialising. We've got it all covered as EBPOM goes virtual. Hot on the heels of the huge success of EBPOM 2020 live from London, we're now headed towards EBPOM Chicago. Come aboard and be part of one of the most exciting developments in medicine since the stethoscope. EBPOM Chicago. Get yourself to ebpom.org now and guarantee yourself a place at one of the most exciting conferences in the world.